Gary from MACMOST here. Let's take a really close look at what MathNotes can do. Now, MathNotes is a new feature of macOS Sequoia, and it's also in iOS 18 and iPad OS 18. And the basic idea is you can write out math equations in the Notes app and then see the results. You don't have to calculate it on your own. The Notes app will do it for you. But there's a ton of hidden functionality in there. Let's take a look. Let's start by just looking at things that will work on the Mac, and these will all work on the iPhone and iPad as well. And then at the end, we'll take a look at things that specifically work with the touchscreen on the iPhone, iPad. So first, of course, you can do basic math in MathNotes. All you need to do is type the math equation, use equals, and then use either spacebar or return. So here's an example of what can be done. To do one of these, all you need to do is just type something like a number, then plus, another number, and then equals. It'll give you the answer there, but it won't make the answer complete until you either hit spacebar or return, and then you can see it fills it in. And now it doesn't really matter if you add extra spaces and things. You can put spaces to see things a little clearer like that, and it will still work just fine. Now, the first thing I'm going to show you is that you can use parentheses in MathNotes. So you can set the order of operations by grouping things in parentheses. Look at this first example here. 1 plus 2 are grouped together, so they're added together first before being multiplied by 4. And you can have lots of different parentheses and nest the parentheses as you need. Now, if you do math work and you write out equations on paper, you know that you don't actually write the multiplication symbol. If there are parentheses there, you just put the multiplier before it. And you can do that in MathNotes as well, and it assumes multiplication. Now, the important thing to realize here is that it doesn't just do the calculation after you type the equation. You can update the numbers and the answer will update. So for instance, I could change this value here to something else and notice how the answer updates. Also notice that when I select something, you get this little control here. Grab this kind of slider and change the numbers a little bit. Or you can use these buttons here to actually increase or decrease them one by one. Now this whole thing takes on a whole new dimension when you realize you can use variables. So you can just type some text, use words like width and height here, and assign values to them. And then you can use them in equations. So for instance here, I can multiply width times height. It takes those values and gives me the result. I can even use them in more than one equation like that. And then when you change a value, like if I were to change this to 5, notice how both equations update. Everything from this point on, the width value gets changed and you get new answers. And remember how I talked about you don't need multiplication symbols, and that even makes more sense with variables. So you can do things like instead of 3 times a, you could just say 3a and get the result. And this gives you things that look more like what you would write on paper than normally type into a computer prompt. Now you can have variables and change them line by line. So for instance here, I start with width and height equal to something. I do a calculation, and then the next line I change the value of height and I do the same calculation again. So notice on the third line, it calculates 7 times 9. Then I change height to 5, and then on the next line, it's 7 times 5. Now you could also get variable values from other variables, and you could do this with 2 equal symbols on the same line like this. So here I've got area equals width times height. It's taking it from the values I just had, and then I put equals again, and it gives me the value of area. So I'm both assigning area and seeing the value of area on the same line. Now you can use special symbols for things as well. For instance, if you don't want to use a slash for division, which is typically how you do it in computers, you can use the division symbol, which on US keyboards is Option and slash. In addition, Option and V is the square root symbol on US keyboards, and you can actually put that before a number and it will understand it and give you the square root. You can also do this with constants, and we'll look at more constants in a minute. So Option P gets you pi. There are lots of other special symbols and functions you can use. For instance, you could use the caret symbol, which is on US keyboards is Shift 6. And this is for power. So 4 to the 5th power can be written with 4, the caret symbol, and then 5. This is typically how you do it in computer programming languages, so you may already be familiar with it. But you can also use functions like pow is the standard function for power. and it takes two parameters in parentheses separated by a comma. So 4 to the 5th can be written as pal parentheses 4 comma 5 close parentheses. And you can also use special symbols for powers. So you could write 9 squared as 9 squared. So how did I get that 2 symbol there? Well, I just typed something like 8, and then I'm going to use either the FN or globe key and E or Control Command Space to bring up the emoji and special character viewer. And then I'm going to search for the number 2. And I could very easily find the 2 here. Matter of fact, I can search for the number 3, and you could see 3, the superscript version of 3. Use that and then equals, and it understands what you're trying to do. Now you can also do roots a variety of ways. You can use the standard functions sqrt for square root and cbrt for cube root. But you could also, of course, use the caret symbol to raise to a fractional power, like 0.5 would be a square root. It's 1/2. You could also use the symbol, the option V, like I showed before, to get the square root symbol. And there's also a cube root symbol. The way to get that is the same way I showed before, Control Command Space. And if you search for root here, you can see there's a cube root. So here's some other examples of that, and you can combine these to have equations that really look like what you would write out. And for factorials, you can also use the standard exclamation point for those. By the way, if you find value in my videos, you can join the more than 2,000 others that support MACMOST at Patreon. You get exclusive content, course discounts, and more. Read about it right here. I mentioned constants before, and you've got a few of them. You've got pi. You can just do P and I. You've got E, and you just use the letter E. And phi, you can just use PHI for those. Now, how did I type pi? Well, that's just option and P like I showed before. And for phi, I just use the emoji and special character viewer and search for that. And it comes right up. You can do various other functions like logs using the log function, using ln for natural log. You can use the exp function and log10 as well if you're familiar with those. There's also a full set of trigonometry functions. So you've got sine, cosine, tangent. You got arcsine, arccosine, arctangent. And you got the hyperbolic sine, cosine, and tangent as well. And they all, of course, work with radians. So you can see in my first example here, I'm actually using a pi constant inside of that function. But if you want to convert from radians to degrees, you can do that as well. So you can use the rad function for that, and it will give you the result in degrees. The deg function will convert to radians. And you can see an example here of nesting the degree function inside of a cosine function. Now, in addition to doing math, you can do unit conversions. So here are a whole bunch of different examples. If you just type 4 and then IN, the abbreviation for inches, it'll give you meters. You can type out something like miles instead of MI, and it'll give you kilometers. It even understands if you type out miles, you want kilometers, whereas if you were to type 5 MI, it would actually give you km. And here I'm using 18m, and it's going to give me feet and inches as a result. And I'm doing feet and inches, and it's going to give me a fractional amount of meters. Some examples with areas, with fluid measurements, and weights right here. You could also do time. So you could type SEC for seconds, and you can see it gives you the results here in minutes and seconds. And you could add seconds together, and you can see in that case, it's giving the result as a total number of seconds. Not sure why there's the difference, but you can also do hours, minutes, and seconds, and it understands that. But interestingly, adding hours, minutes, and seconds to hours, minutes, and seconds doesn't seem to work. But you can see here, you can use in when doing conversions. So 4H for 4 hours, and type the word in, and then the unit you want, like seconds, it'll actually do the conversion for you. So there is hope for doing much more complex time math if you work with it. Math notes can also handle multiple units. So for instance, if you take miles divided by minutes, you get miles per minute. If you take miles divided by hours, you get miles per hour. It even spells out PER. You can do miles per hour, MPH, times the number of hours and get miles out of it. It understands that. Miles per gallon times gallons gives you miles. And you can do miles per gallon, and it will convert to liters per kilometer. Nice. I also note it gets unit symbols like a single quote for feet and a double quote for inches. So you can see it does some math here. And you can also use degree symbols. And I found that option 0, shift option 8, option K, and the word DEG or degrees all worked to find degrees, and it'll convert to radians like that. You can also do temperature conversions. So it assumes F means Fahrenheit and converts to Celsius. It assumes C means Celsius and converts to Fahrenheit. But you could always use in and then one of those, or in this case, K for Kelvin, to convert to the unit you want. You can also put currency symbols in front of numbers, and it understands that. So in this first line here, I put a $sign in front of these two numbers, and it gives me the answer with the $sign. I did the same thing with euros, and it worked as well. And yes, it will do conversions. So you can type something like the euro symbol in 8 and it'll convert to US dollars. And you could see, you can even type out the word euros, and you can use in for something else. So $100 in yen, and it'll convert to yen. So it's using the same conversion that's in the calculator app for this. Notice the last one, I'm actually adding euros and dollars. And since I used euros first, it's actually giving me the answer in euros after converting the dollars to euros. It also understands memory and storage units. So you can use things like MB and KB and TB and do math with those. So you can even use that in function there to convert to something else. And you can also use currency and other units in variables. So for instance here, I'm assigning the value of $27 to the variable taxi, $75 to ticket. When I add taxi plus ticket, you could see it applies the units there. For the variable distance, I have it 15 miles and time is 15 minutes. And you can see when I do distance divided by time, I get 1 mile per minute. Or if I add in MPH, I get miles per hour. The percentage symbol also works here. So instead of having to multiply something by like 0.01 to get 1%, you can just say 1%. So here I've got two examples of multiplying by percentages to get the result. Now back to variables for a minute. You can increment variables by referring to the same variable in its definition. So I can do a equals 1 and then redefine a as a equals a plus 1. And you can see here the result I get makes sense. So if I were to change this value to something else like that, you could say I get the result. So this gives you some interesting possibilities with variables. If you're wondering whether these need to all be on one line, they don't. You can use spaces or other dividers, like you might want to use a semicolon to go between things. So here I'm incrementing a variable and getting the answer on the same line, which makes it a little clearer what I'm doing. You can use scientific notation for numbers with the capital E. So here I've got A equals 4E10. So it's going to put 10 zeros after the 4. And you can see when I get the result of A, that's what it gives me, and it uses the calculations as well. Here's some functions for rounding. Round goes to the nearest integer. Our int is something called banker's rounding, which goes to even numbers. So 4.5 goes down to 4, whereas 5.5 goes up to 6. 4 goes always down, and ceil always goes up to the ceiling. There are a lot more functions too. You've got ABS for absolute value. You've got fmod for the remainder of division. You've got the hypotenuse of a right triangle with two parameters. So here, if you have a right triangle that's 3 on one side, 4 on the other, the result is 5 for the length of the other side. You've got a min function and a max function, but sadly these only seem to work if you've got two numbers in them. You can't do more. You can do mods or modulus using the percent symbol between two numbers, which is typically how I do it on computers, but you can also use MOD for mod. So this gives you the remainder of division. So 10 divided by 3, you're going to get a remainder of 1. 12 divided by 3, you're going to get a remainder of 0. There are also some bitwise operations, an and or, using the ampersand or the pipe symbol. These basically take the number, convert them to binary, and then either and the ones and zeros or the ones and zeros. It's something that programmers might use. And there's definitely more. I explored and tried all sorts of things, but I'm sure there's more left to be found. There are even some things that I can't quite explain, like using a tilde symbol between two numbers produces results like this. I can't find any reference for what would produce these results or what the tilde symbol might mean in this case. If you know, please let me know in the comments. Now, there's even more you can do if you're on an iPhone or an iPad. You can use your finger to touch the screen, or on an iPad, use an Apple Pencil. So in the Notes app, if you write out an equation with your finger or the pen like this, it's going to show you that there's an equation there that it recognizes, and you could tap solve and it will solve it. Notice how it kind of wrote the number kind of match my handwriting. It's just using a font that looks kind of similar to your style of handwriting. I think it's got a few to choose from, and it will give you the result there. So you can do all sorts of calculations like that, and you could see you can check it by looking at what's there and typing solve. Now the cool thing is you can change the numbers by just tapping on a number. So you can tap on like this number here, and then you can move back and forth and you can change the value that's there and you can see the result change. It works really nicely and smoothly. So another cool thing you can do on the iPhone and iPad that you can't do on the Mac is you can create graphs. And you would do that by starting with y equals and then use x on the other side. So maybe something like 2x squared plus 3x minus 1, like that. And then you tap the equals and then it tells you what it thinks the equation is, so you can confirm that it's right. And then you can tap Insert Graph there, and it will create this graph and show you the equation graphed out. And you can increase its size. You can grab it, move it around in here. You can use two fingers and pinch it to shrink it, but also move it around. So let's get it back here to 0, 0 like this. And this will update if I change here. So if I go into the equation and I change this number, you can see it changes what's there. I could change this number here, even change the power here. With the graph selected, you could actually tap the first symbol there at the top in the little menu, and you can then change the color like that. You could even add another equation to this. So let's go and say, let's add that. And you could see I could add to an existing graph, and it will put that line there and use a different color for that. If I were to tap on the graph there and tap that first little symbol in the menu, you can see now I've got the two colors and the two equations. That's really cool functionality, and I hope eventually they find a way to bring that to the Mac version of Notes as well. So as you can see, there's a ton of different stuff that you can do in Math Notes. It's really exciting if you have to do calculations and maybe you don't want to start a whole spreadsheet for just doing a few lines of calculations, or you want to combine them with other notes and text very easily. I know there are going to be a lot of uses for people that work or study science or finance and other subjects as well. If you liked this video, click the thumbs up button below to let me know. I publish new tutorials each weekday. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out.